Hello, this is Philips from Platsderm's Design Company, and this is what we are creating. We will start by creating a new composition. Go to Composition, New Composition. We'll be working in Full HD, 25 frames per second, and 10 seconds should be fine. We'll call this source. And then take a text tool and create your title. Basically you can use whatever color, but for this tutorial I'm going to use dark gray, and later on, once we get it set and working, we can then come back and change the colors. And you can use whatever font. Normally those fat fonts or thick fonts would work the best, and for this tutorial I'm going to use a font called Lot. It looks great, and it's actually a free font. You can download it from fontfabric.com. It looks great especially for projects like this. So that's the source comp, and you can leave it for a moment and create a new comp, either by going Composition, New Composition, or clicking on Create a New Comp button. And we'll call this Title Adjustments. Again, Full HD, 25 frames and 10 seconds. Okay. I'm bringing the source comp into this one. Now duplicate the source comp either by Edit, Duplicate, or Control D or Command D, and we'll work with this top layer. Take the pen tool and we'll draw a mask. Start from outside of composition, click and drag, then go to the opposite side, click and drag, come a bit lower, click and drag, come back here, click and drag, and connect your mask by clicking on the first point. So now switch back to selection tool and adjust the mask by clicking on those points and then adjusting it. What you want to do, you want to make the middle part selected, and since we have two copies we don't really see it, but if you shut off the other copy you can see that only the middle part is selected, and probably we need to bring this down a bit, also this one. Okay, now click on this layer, hit F on the keyboard to bring up the mask feather property, and bring up the feather something like this, 57 pixels. Now you can turn back on the visibility for the background layer, and basically you don't see any difference. So we will apply an effect to this top layer. Go to Effects, Color Correction, Exposure, and we'll bring up the exposure to 1, or maybe even 0.9 works fine. It also depends on what color your title are. So for the moment 0.9 will work fine. And now I'll be also creating another layer, and this time make sure no layers are selected, so just click away somewhere, then go and click on the pen tool and draw an object like this and connect it back. So this is our shape layer, which in a minute we will turn it into a nice effect. So take the bottom source layer. Actually we need to rename those so we know what is what. This is middle mask. This is the actual title, and we will duplicate it. Command D or Control D on a PC. and bring it on top of your shape layer, and you can hit enter to change the name, and we'll call this matte. So now click on your shape layer, and if you don't have those buttons, which I also don't have, come down to the toggle switches and click on this one to see track matte and blending mode buttons. And basically what you want to do for this shape layer, you want to change track matte to alpha matte. So what this does, it shows this shape layer only where this top layer is. So basically it will colorize part of your title completely white, but you don't want it to be completely white. You want it to be quite opaque, so quite transparent. So click on the shape layer, hit T on a keyboard to bring up opacity parameter, and bring it down to 7 or even less, 7, maybe 6. Also, this depends on your title color. For this dark gray one, 6% will be fine. And later we can animate position of this and make like a nice light interaction, like a flare going over glare going over the title. So that's for later, and for a moment we will leave it, and let's start creating a 3D extrusion. Go back to project panel and create another new composition, new composition, and we'll call it 3D build up. Again, full HD, 25 frames per second, 10 seconds, that's fine. Click OK. And bring in your title adjustments layer. So now we'll start to apply some effects and also do some expression coding to make this work as we need to. So let's create a new layer, new solid, and color doesn't matter, size doesn't matter. We'll call it controls. Hit OK. The size doesn't matter because it will be invisible. We just need it to, so we could put the controls on the single layer and control all this from just single point. And so have your controls layer selected, go to effects, expression controls, and slider control. We will rename it, click on it, hit enter, and we'll call it extrusion. Now we'll go down to title adjustments, hit P on a keyboard to bring up position parameter, and you see there are only 2 values, so this means we forgot to turn our title adjustment layer into a 3D layer. So toggle switches again to see this switch and click on this 3D switch to make this layer 3D. Now this brought up orientation and rotations, so we don't need it. We'll just close it back down and hit P again, so we have only position visible. Now hold down Alt key and click on the stopwatch. This will allow us to write some expression for the position, and the expressions will be pretty basic. We'll type x equals value brackets and 0 and semicolon. Then next line will be y equals value brackets 1 and semicolon, and then z equals value brackets 2 semicolon. What this does, there are 3 variables, and we assign values to those variables. This value 0 is basically this parameter, value 1 is this parameter and value 2 is this parameter. Now we have assigned values to variables. Now we need to output those variables to something. So we'll create brackets and type x, y, z, and that's all. At the moment, this expression is useless because basically what it does, it assigns those three expressions, those three parameters to three variables, and then output those variables again back to the same order. So no use for this expression, and that's why we'll be adjusting this z value. But before we can do that, we need to click on Controls layer and reveal FX extrusion and make this slider visible. We'll also adjust the workspace so we have more space here. And now we will change the z value. Click on this. You can delete this and click on the pick width and go up, parent this with the slider value. So at the moment this says take x from this value, take y from this value, and take z from this slider. And we will add another thing. We will add multiply by index and semicolon. Every line in expression has to end with semicolon. So now what it does, it says for the z value, take the slider value and multiply by layer number. So for example, if we change the slider to 1, you see this changes to 2 because 1 multiplies 2 times, it's 2. If you change this to 5, for example, this turns to 10 because 5 2 times, it's 10. And in a moment I will explain you more why we did this multiply index. And for a moment we'll change it back to 0. So that's one thing. We'll add another effect. Go to FX, color correction, and brightness and contrast. And we also want to control this plugin from controls layer. So we need another expression control. Go to FX, expression controls, and create another slider control. And we'll be renaming this as edge light. So go back to this title adjustments layer. Bring up the properties, but instead of transform, this time we'll be going into FX, brightness, contrast, and also we need to expand this edge light so we can see the slider value, and we'll be parenting lightness to the slider. And this time again, hold down Alt, click on the stopwatch at the brightness, take the pick width and bring it up to edge light slider. So just like previously, we parented those other things. At the moment, the brightness for this layer, the value for the brightness is taken from this slider. So as we change the slider, so the brightness changes. Change back to 0, and again we'll do the same thing. We'll multiply it by the index. By the way, if you have just one line of expression, you don't need to end it with semicolon. You can just leave it like that. If you have several lines, you definitely need to have a semicolon, otherwise After Effects will give you an error. So another effect, which will be the last one for this, go to Effects, and actually I don't know where to find it from here, so we will be using another way how you can apply effects to a layer. Go to Effects and Presets panel and type bevel. So there are two plugins that says bevel, and we're looking for bevel alpha instead of bevel edges, so bevel alpha it is. Apply it to this title adjustment. And again, we'll be parenting this these parameters to our controls layer. Click on controls layer, create some more expression controls, go to FX, expression controls, angle control, and another FX, expression control, slider control. We'll call this angle control as light duration, and the slider control as light amount. So again, go back to the title adjustments. This time we can close the brightness and contrast and instead bring out the bevel and alpha. And we'll be parenting this edge thickness. Hold Alt, click on the stopwatch, and we'll be parenting it with light amount slider. So this edge thickness, take the pick whip and bring up to light amount slider. It's important that you don't miss those, because the names are quite similar. You can come up with your own names, but make sure you parent it to the right ones. And then the light angle. Again, hold Alt, click on the stopwatch for light angle, and parent it with light direction. Or you can call light angle if that seems more convenient for you. So that's all. Basically, what we just did, we applied 2FX, brightness and bevel alpha, and parented or linked them to the controls layer, so we can control those parameters from the single layer. And that will make sense in a moment when we will be duplicating this in quite a few copies. So at the moment, by this slider, you are actually controlling the bevel amount. By this angle control, you're controlling the bevel angle, and you can see it actually if you turn on the bevel amount, let's say 5 or even 9, you see a bevel, and now you can change the angle, and you see it moves around here, around the edges. We'll leave it to 0 at the moment, and also we'll turn this to 0 at the moment. So we can collapse those, and we are ready to start duplicating our layers. Duplicating the layers is as easy as just clicking on this first one and either hitting Command D or Control D, or going to edit duplicate, but this is really not the best way how to do it, because then you have to do this action several times. So basically just click on it and go Command D or Control D if you're on PC, and do it like 30 times or even 50 times. Keep in mind the more copies you make, the slower your project will, or your computer will get, but around 50 copies would work the best. At the moment, just for the sake of this tutorial and to save your time, I'm gonna have a 35 copies. At the moment this says 36 because my controls layer has number 1, but I'm gonna bring this down, because remember previously we did this multiply by index thing, and this index is taking this number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and so on. So if we have our controls layer on the top of it, then instead of starting from the first layer, it would start from the second, and that would adjust our index parameter. So remember what we did previously, we linked our position with this extrusion parameter, and we multiplied it by the layer number. Let me create a new camera layer, new camera, so I can show you this from the angle. and I will explain it. So we create a camera again. We'll bring it at the very bottom, below the title adjustment layers, and click on this camera, orbit camera tool, and bring it to the side. At the moment you see that this is just one flat layer, but the miracle happens in the moment we turn up this extrusion slider. We can just change the slider from 0 to 1, and voila, our single layer just got extruded, but you can't see it. So that's why we have this light amount. We'll turn this up as well. We'll turn it to 5. And now you can see it even better. But at the moment it looks really bad because the first layer is beveled as well. So go up to the first layer, click on it, and just disable the bevel. This way you have a nice sharp edge, and then the lighting effect from the bevel. At the moment we have this extrusion set at 1, so this is quite narrow. You can of course go bigger numbers like 2 or maybe even 5. But keep in mind, if you have just few copies and then you bring up the extrusion a lot, once you move your camera, you will start to see that it's built from several layers. So the best thing is if you could just keep the slider to 1 and duplicate it, or create more layers to achieve the bigger extrusion. But well, that would be quite extreme, and that would require a lot of power from your computer. So just try to stay between 1 and 5. That should work fine. At the moment I will change it to 2.5, or well, okay, maybe 3. That will give a nice extrusion and will allow us to rotate this as well quite far. So that's the extrusion, and because we did what we did was this position thing, these layers got extruded automatically, because now the Z space, which is the depth, it took our value from our extrusion slider and it multiplied by this number. So the more layers, the more they extrude in Z space. And also remember we did the multiply by index thing to the edge light. And what this edge light is doing, I will show you just in a minute. So go to the controls layer, open the edge light and change it to, let's say, 3. And you see your edge is almost the same lightness or same darkness at the first layer, but the further it goes, the lighter it gets. Or you can have the opposite effect by typing -3, negative number, and the further it goes, the darker it gets. So now basically you have the full control over the light, or over the effect that light would cause. Because of course you could create a 3D light and then try to position it in a 3D space to achieve what you want to achieve, but this is much easier, because instead of trying to find the right spot for the light, at the moment you are adjusting the effect that light would create. So you're working straight on the effect, not trying to position the light on the right place to achieve the effect that you're looking for. And for a moment I'm gonna go back to the source and shut off my title and just type a simple 0 and then change font to Arial, or maybe Arial Black. Make it bigger, and go back to 3D build-up. And especially for objects that has hole in the middle, you can really see the other light that we created, light direction and light amount. If you bring up the amount, probably 5 is enough, but yeah, we can bring it up to 9. So you see the difference between here and here is greater. So this is really dark and this is bright, and at the moment it looks like light would be shining on it from the top. You can change it, click on controls, click on light direction, and change this from 0 to 180. And now you have totally opposite, as the light would be shining from the bottom. So once you turn it, you see that the bottom is bright, the inside top is bright, and this top edge and inside bottom is dark because the shadow is casting on it. Of course, you can have whatever value you want. You can have the light from the side, but I have found that either 0 or 180 is working the best. So in this light controls, together with this edge light, is really giving you a lot of control over how the lighting looks on this. And actually, this is the key thing why this extrusion technique is better than others, because you have really nice control over the light, and lights are doing miracles in this project. So go back to source. I'll shut off the 0 and then show our title again. Go back to build up. So that's our title. We can shut off the camera and we'll start to create some nice animations. Go back to project panel, create another new composition. We'll call it final comp, the same parameters. Click OK, and bring in the 3D buildup in the final comp. And we want to make this layer a 3D. We want to activate this collapse transformation, because at the moment, if we would be creating a camera, new camera, and trying to orbit the camera around, you see this layer is flat again, and we can't see any of the nice extrusion that we created before. So once you click the collapse transformation, this thing, the extrusion comes back again, and basically you get a single element of 3D text with all the lightings and other things in it. So that's more handy than dealing with all those 35, or maybe even you duplicated like 50 copies or something. So this is a good thing to just bring in the build-up composition, turn it into a 3D layer, and turn on the this collapse transformation switch, and there you go. So we'll be creating some other effects like background, and also I will teach you some things about camera, some tricks that will make this look even better. At the moment, I'm going to delete this camera because we will be creating another one, and I'll explain what and why. But at the moment, we'll create a background. So go to layer, new, solid, and we can call it background. Instead of creating it comp size, I mean full HD, we'll have the same height as the comp, 1080, but width will be 800 pixels, and color doesn't really matter. We'll click OK and bring it below our title. Now we will go to FX, generate, ramp, and we'll be creating a radial ramp. If you're coming from Photoshop background, you know that Photoshop has much more controls over the ramp. In After Effects, either you get a linear ramp or perfectly round ramp, and you can adjust those, but you can't get it other form than perfectly round. And I'm going to show you a quick technique how you can change this. So we want to gray for the middle and almost black for edges. And now what we will be doing, right click on your background layer, transform and fit to comp. So your background got, we'll solo it, your background got stretched, and so the ramp effect got stretched. So this is a nice way how to get your ramp in another form than perfectly round form. So we can adjust this. We don't want the edge to be too obvious. Probably something like this. Unsolo the layer. Another thing, we will be creating a nice shadow. So click on 3D buildup, Command D to duplicate it, and the bottom copy. We need it to be a 3D layer, but we can turn off the collapse transformation switch because we don't need all the extrusion and all those things. And we'll be bringing it down. You can just hold down Shift and use your arrow keys on the keyboard to bring it down a bit, something like this. Now we will be applying effect, generate fill to make it black, and effect blur and sharpen, fast blur. We'll bring up the blur quite a lot. Like this, and we can maybe even scale it. So click on it, hit S on the keyboard to bring up scale, and unlock those. This is for width, this is for height. We wanted to scale the height to make it something like this. And also bring up the P for position, and we need to put it behind our title. Yeah, maybe 10 in the Z space would work. Also we can bring it down a bit, use your arrow keys, or just grab this green thing and bring it down. Maybe again the scale, and scale a bit more like this, and opacity we want to lower it. So click T on a keyboard and lower the opacity for the shadow. And maybe we want to even make our whole title smaller. So go back to the source, make it smaller, make it centered. Check the title adjustments again. We still have the middle point, not really, so click on the middle mask, hit M on the keyboard to bring up mask, click on the mask and just use your arrow keys to bring it down a bit. Yeah, that's fine. Go to the final comp. So that's our title with the nice blurry shadow. We'll be creating a camera now. So go to layer, new camera. And the trick is that you create your camera pretty wide, 35 or 50 millimeters would be considered normal. But you want to create your camera at 20 or even 15. I'll go for 20 at the moment. And where's the difference, you might ask? And the difference is once you turn your title, you see the difference. I'll be also linking this shadow. We'll actually call it shadow. And we'll call this 3D title. We'll parent the shadow to the title, grab the pick width and just bring it on top of that. And we'll hit R on the keyboard to bring up rotation parameters, and change the rotation on Y axis. And you see it when you turn it, this part gets like really big and wide, and this gets narrow. We'll create another camera so I can show you the difference. Layer new camera and create it like 35 millimeters. Okay, and turn off this camera, leave this on. You see it looks like the simple title just rotated. With the other camera it got stretched as well, so this gives like a nice look, and will make your logo look better. So delete the second camera, leave just first one. Now we will be creating some basic animations, and yeah, go to the first frame and click on the stopwatch for Y rotation. Probably change it to -56. We'll start our animation from this side, go to the 5th second mark and change it to 56 positive. So you have a nice rotation animation from one side to another. And now it's time to animate our glare layer. Go to title adjustment. We'll start from the 0 second, move our shape layer really to the right. Hold down Shift and use your arrow keys on the keyboard to adjust it. Click on a stopwatch for position to create a keyframe. Move in time to 5 seconds and bring it in, probably something like this. Go back to your final comp, and now as your title rotates, the glare is coming in as well. And you might fine-tune those animations, because if your glare is moving a lot but the title is actually turning just a little bit, it will not look good, and vice versa. If your title is turning a lot and your glare is moving just a little bit, it will also look unnatural. Probably we can also make some adjustments in the color. For example, take this last layer and create it something like green, yellow, something like that to make it stand out more. Final comp. Yeah, that looks pretty good. You can rotate your camera to actually show a bit of top part, because as I told you previously, the essence of this project is the edges. So when you see the edges, that's what makes it look good. And now when you see the edges, you can go to the 3D build-up. Probably you need one camera here as well, so you can adjust the colors. Maybe even copy the background, Command or Control C, go to 3D build-up, go to the very bottom and paste your background even below the controls. We can also turn on the shy switch for those, not for the camera but for those layers, and hide those. We'll bring the camera down so our layers start to number from the first position, not from the second. And now we can adjust the controls. Extrusion was fine. Edge light -3, maybe even more, -5, or even maybe put it less light direction. Probably from top it's fine, since we have the shadow on the bottom, and light amount. You can adjust it. Maybe 5, maybe even less. 3, 4. Let's try 4. Yeah, 4 should be 9. It should be fine. Something like this. You can tweak those to get the look you want. Another thing, instead of switching off the visibility for the camera each time you go back to Final Comp, you just click on your camera, right click, and for cameras it doesn't work. Yeah, for background, right click and turn it into a guide layer. So that way you see the background here, but you don't see once you come through to the next comp, because this is the background that you see. If this background in the 3D build-up comp would not be a guide layer, you would see it in here, and once you rotate it, your background would be rotating as well. Oh no, it's not a 3D, so it's not rotating. But anyways, keep it as a guide layer, so you see it in this comp, and don't see it in this comp. I can have a separate background or other things going on in a background, add some effects or some other details. And have your nice 3D title, rotating and having the light effects on the edges and on the front side. So that's all. Thank you for watching. I really hope you find this tutorial useful, and the technique we are learning here, I hope you will use this technique in a lot of projects. I'm using this technique a lot in my projects I create for videohive.net, and it might be useful for you as well. Thank you for watching again. My name is Philips from Platsderm's Design Company.